introduce, my name is Putri Dwi Anggriani. I want to explain the context in the regarding some important things about emotional abuse, consequence of English teacher on EFL students learning process. Background of the study. Number one, English become a second language for students because English a foreign language that they do not get at the beginning of the language introduction and not the language used their daily life. A general reality that cannot be denied is that learning a second language of or learning a language other than the mother tongue is a big challenge. And starting from the language aspect itself, the culture aspect that characteristic the learning, as well as the historical aspect of the language itself. This condition is a challenge for second language learners. Second language learners must grapple with how the second system, sound system of the speech cords of a new language is organized and how meaning are represented by words, sentence, and a text, and how the written cards can be understood. In addition, the learner must understand the use of this new language in a variety of contexts, sociocultural aspects, including verbal and nonverbal variation are tongue tasks for both the teacher and the learners. The second language that is often tongue or often studied by students in is English. English becomes a second language for students because English is a foreign language that they do not get at the beginning of language introduction and is not the language used in their daily life. And number two in background of the study is the second language learning process is different from the mother tongue. Students often have to accept a consequence that have long-term impact on them. However, it's undeniable that in the process of learning a second language, and when a difference from the mother tongue, students often have to accept consequences that have long-term impact on them. The consequence they receive when they are learner a second language is the abuse of the teacher's emotions when teaching a second language to students. Outside of the intermediate family, teachers are the group most often the continuously in contact with children until the child finishes education. And number two background of the study is emotional are real, often more and a higher intensity among teachers than among other many other professions. Emotional manifest themselves more frequently and higher intensive among teachers than is many other professions. The emotion aspect of interpersonal and interpersonal and intergroup school the interest in a complex way support every aspect of teacher's work. In particular, the intensive dynamics and interaction that occur between teacher and student and is therefore it's not easy for students to detect that the common to find student blaming themselves for teacher behavior. Teachers themselves are often unaware of their inappropriate behavior, saying it as harmless or trigger is respond the student misbehavior and to direct it Finally, the relatively limit scope is the research may also be to the more common erroneous assumption that science corporal punishment is outlined in Western school abuse from the discipline knowledge and exist. The main objective of the study is to reduce the gap that exists in research on the consequence of emotional abuse of an English teacher in the teaching process of EFL students. The recent question of what kind of consequence do EFL students get from the abuse of emotional by the teachers? Objective of the study, the research aims at exposing what kind of consequence do EFS students get from the abuse of emotional by the teachers. The significance of the study for the student is the expect that the student EFL can just speak up when the student gets an act of mis- misuse of emotion by the teacher when learning is going on. The for the teachers is the expect in calm make the teacher will consider of consequence that student will get when the teachers abuse their emotion to students who are crying out English learning as their second language. For the researcher, it's expected that this research can be a reference of further research, especially research with a similar topic and scope limitation. The scope of this research is any discussion about emotional abuse and EFL students. The limitation is on the discussion about the emotional abuse consequence of English teachers on EFL student learning process. And the theoretical framework is definition of emotional abuse. Emotional abuse refers to relationship between a child and a caregiver which a characterized by the consistent pattern of harmful contraction for the child without including acts of physical or sexual abuse. And emotional abuse by teacher can be defined as a pattern of verbal and non-verbal behavior that do not include any type of physical contact between a student and a teacher which result in emotional, social, cognitive, and sometimes consequence for the student functioning and adjustment. And number two, effect of emotional abuse or by teacher. By teacher is an student relationship has been associated with students' emotional behavior and cognitive results. So it becomes the center of student student school experience. While positive teacher discipline relationship contribute to the student with where that negative aspect this relationship might have unfavorable result on their socio-emotional adjustment. Interesting threatening building in interesting interesting and threatening melting and interesting it's some teacher behavior that cause emotional abuse in students. Such behavior does not only make belief that should include student-teacher relationship. And number three, the impact of bad treatment of students. The teacher persuasion has been recorded to have traumatic effect on the development of children and reported by students as there was the experience than peaceful abuse. The teacher emotional persuasion is very dangerous because it happens in meaningful relationship where students tend to put trust in their teacher and seek to build the an effective relationship that the meaningful to the when the precision cause the threat to their overall safety. Where students cannot keep themselves, they decline cognitive research and academic motivation and losing in the interest of teacher and school opinion. And number three is definition EFL student. The term teaching derive many definitions such as explained in international dictionary and adult and containing education that teaching is number one, the process of presenting knowledge, skill, attitudes, and or value which can be transmitted to and learned by others. Number two, a process of questioning so that the student can learn through the consequence of question and answer. Number three, the creation of situation and experience through which students have the opportunity to learn. And the last number four, in a Scannerian sense, teaching is about arranging the content and of reinforcement. Reviews relate study. Nurture years 2018, the findings suggest that emotional abuse by teacher should be considered as a potential source of behavioral problems and adjustment in students. Tyler, years 2020, teachers had difficulty not being allowed to exhibit any form of creativity, having extensive workloads, dealing with students who were silent, had mental problems, or were xenophobic. Katzman, years 2021, teacher, emotional mistreatment, which includes both verbal and nonverbal abuse behavior, is a widespread and harmful experience for school students. Max Echern's years 2008, a child, a child may recover from physical pain and injuries but may never recover from the terror, degradation, humiliation, and outrage or threats involved in emotional abuse. Research method approach. This, stu- this study employed the qualitative research method with the social phenomena approach. Data. The data is the research or points of the text from the emotional abuse consequence of English teacher in on EFL students' learning process. Search data. The data source is an interview of EFL learners, students to know the consequence of the issue of emotion by the teacher. Data collection. Number one, observation. Observation is the first process carried out to obtain information from data. At this stage, the research collection information related to the topic. Number two, interview. Interview method, a technique of distribute question. There are three types of interview: structured interview, unstructured interview, and semi-structured interview. Number three, documentation. Documentation serves as a support of interview technique so that the data obtained can be trusted. The last is data analysis. The technique of analysis is case study analysis. The consists of the case study analysis is number one, determine research question. Number two, case of consequence of data. Number three, be prepared to collect data. Number four, collect data in the field. Number five, analyze and present results. Finally, thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.